Today, we're going to study a classic chess game. And I say classic because that's where you really learn how to play chess. The game is between Alexander Alekhine with the white pieces and Aaron Nimzowitsch with the black pieces. These were two players who didn't just move the pieces for the sake of it, but because they knew exactly what they were doing. In fact, Aaron Nimzowitsch is one of my favorite chess players. Even though he ends up losing this game, we'll be able to clearly understand the plans of both white and black. Nowadays, we see a lot of modern games, but many of the moves come from computers, and even though they're very good, they're not always easy to understand. On the other hand, in classic games, it's just the opposite. Every move has an idea, a plan, something you can learn and use in your own games. That's why studying the classics is so important, because here you learn when to attack, when to improve your pieces, when and where to apply pressure, why a position is good or bad, all of that, right? This is a game for It's not a game to just rush through, so to speak. It's a game to study calmly, to really understand, to watch again, okay? And you'll see that you'll really agree with me that this is a super instructive game. All right, I won't ramble on any longer. Chess teacher, you're such a chatterbox. Show me the game already. But I think this little introduction was necessary. Nimzowitsch plays the French defense, d4 taking the center, d5 the main line, there are a lot of variations here, and Alekhine chooses the knight to c3 variation, one of my favorites. Here you should know that, for example, c5 is already a mistake because it would lose a pawn. After pawn takes pawn, and then d takes c5. Did you see? He'd lose a pawn. Why? Because when you capture here, this pawn would be attacked twice. So c5 is a mistake, all right? I'm sure that many French defense players here would be thinking about playing c5. The main line has always been knight to f6, and the more modern one, the one Nimzowitsch himself used, thank you very much. In this game, bishop to b4 is played, pinning the knight on c3, mainly because it puts strong pressure on the d4 square, since it's the knight's job to defend it. You might want to play bishop to d2, but for now it's better not to, because exchanges would follow and then the pawn would be captured. So first, you play e5. Do you understand what Alekhine is doing here? First, he's placing this spearhead so far advanced that it doesn't allow the knight, the defender of castling, to develop naturally, because of the fixed square. Now, after the move c5, which is indeed possible, bishop to d2 to avoid the pin wouldn't be possible. You can check this yourselves on your own board. I recommend the following. When you watch these videos, you can play through them on your own board and try out the variations. That way, studying will be much more enjoyable. By the way, before I forget, starting today, my supplier, my favorite chess supplier, which is exactly this one, Chessie's Art, has given us a 15% discount on the entire store for all of us who are followers of the channel. And how can you take advantage of it? Well, whenever you place any order at Chessie's Art, which I'll leave for you down here in the description, any order for anything, okay? Pieces, boards, sets, whatever you want. If you enter the discount code CHESSTEACHER, which I'll also leave for you down here in the description, they'll automatically give you a 15% discount. So I assure you that if I'm collaborating with this brand, it's because I haven't found any better chess sets out there. Plus, the service is 100% excellent. The longtime followers of the channel know this. Many of you have already sent me photos showing that you have boards and pieces from this very shop. So anyway, I'm leaving this as a little gift for all of you, just for anyone who wants to take advantage of it. Remember, you have it down below in the description, discount code Chester, 15% off. The idea here is that they can't capture this pawn, even though it looks free, because White's plan, you know what it is here, is to place the knight on b5, which they'll end up doing anyway, and then move it to d6. From d6, that knight will be an absolute monster, really hard to get rid of, right? So now, if pawn takes pawn, knight to b5. It would be almost impossible to stop. If the bishops are exchanged, then the knight comes in. You can check it out for yourselves on the board. Knight to e7 is a much better move, but Alekhine goes ahead and puts his knight directly on b5. You'll see that Alekhine was a total genius. Bishop takes bishop, queen takes, taking advantage of the fact that it's check, then bishop takes bishop, so he gains a tempo to be able to castle, because now you can see the threat, right friends? If, for example, you play a 6, which would be a very bad move, then knight to d6, check would follow, the king would have to move, and this knight would be fantastic here. So, since he exchanged with check, now Nimzovich can castle, and even though at some point Alekhine will still be able to put his big knight on d6, at least it will not be with check, and the king will be safely castled. These kinds of games aren't won with some brutal trick to deliver checkmate. No, they're won by truly understanding what's going on, so you can replicate it in the games you play later on. Honestly, you're gonna love it. The game continues with the move b6. It's a completely logical move. You know that the French defense has a big drawback, which is that since e6 is played very quickly, the light squared bishop becomes the bad bishop and gets blocked in. So, with the move b6, Nimzovich understands that he can develop his bishop via a6, and who knows, maybe even trade off this bishop at some point. Such a bad bishop for this very good white square bishop. Why is this the good bishop? Because, of course, first here Alekhine plays c3, and now, yes, bishop to a6. As you can see, all the pawns are on dark squares, so this is the good bishop because it's the light squared one. Therefore, this bishop 6 is a very interesting move to give that bishop some life. f4, central expansion by Alekhine, bishop to a 6, a completely logical move. I assume y'all are understanding every move, right? And that's what's truly important about this lesson. The game continues with knight to f3. Queen to d7, the first delicate moment of the game. They're putting pressure on our knight on b5, a very important knight with two pieces, the queen and the bishop, and it's only defended by the bishop. What should I do? Should I move it away? Should I put it directly on d6? No. It definitely seems like a much better idea to defend it with the move a4, right? Because that way, we keep a certain position with this knight very well placed on b5. When we have a knight that's really well placed, obviously we don't want to move it from there no matter what, right? We should try to keep it there as strongly as possible. The idea is that now, if they capture this knight with the bishop, which might seem like a really good idea at first, right? Because they're getting rid of their bad bishop, and they're trading it for a huge steed that's going to settle on the d6 square and cause a lot of trouble. How would you capture, with the bishop or with the pawn? Take your time to think about it. The correct answer is to capture with the pawn, and that's definitely the right move, because if you capture with the bishop, sure, you're attacking the queen, but the position would close up at some point and absolutely nothing would happen. However, if we capture with the pawn, our position becomes tremendously strong. This turns into a triple advantage. First, the file opens up for the rook. Awesome, right? A rook on an open file would be fantastic. Second, we're fixing a weakness on a7. How do you fix a weakness? Well, it's a backward pawn, easy to attack. And also, thanks to this pawn here, it's not easy to advance. And third, this pawn is acting like an umbrella for the knight, which cannot get out through a6 or c6, so basically we are shutting down the knight. So no matter what, if they decide to capture our knight, we would recapture with the pawn. Interesting, right? Especially for all of you who thought the best move was to capture with the bishop. Knight to c6, developing the knight, b4, gaining a bit of space on the queen side, pawn takes pawn, and pawn takes pawn on b4, and now this bishop retreats to b7. It's not the best move in this position, but we're not going to criticize it either, because that's not the point of this video. The idea now is that, quickly, since we've pretty much got everything set up, it's true that we still need to castle and develop this bishop, but since we can do that and there's no danger because the position is very closed, Alekhine decides to place his steed on d6, and as you can see, this knight is an absolute monster. It's set up in enemy territory, on an advanced post defended by the pawn, and no one can easily attack it, just the knight. And on top of that, it's controlling a bunch of squares in enemy territory. That's why this knight is so good. It's like having someone in your house who won't let you move around your own place normally, right? Always a nuisance. So it's true that it's not threatening anything serious, but it really bothers the black pieces, and who knows if later on it might become a problem. 5, just a move, right? Trying to block the king's side a little bit. However, our plan is clear, to attack thanks to our knight that's putting pressure everywhere. Our idea isn't to trade pawns here. Hey, if the player with the black pieces decides to exchange, we could keep up the pressure with b5, then win back this pawn. That would be great. But our idea is to start gaining space on the queen side, so they can't do anything at all, you see? The opponent's pieces wouldn't be able to do anything. So here, black has to react right away by trying to get rid of this knight with knight to c8. Another key moment in the game. Of course, a lot of you are probably thinking they're about to take out this knight, which is probably my best weapon in the game. If I don't do anything, they'll go knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. Not only will I lose the knight, but I'll also lose a pawn. So I only have two options. Either pull it back, which would be pretty sad, right? Because then they'd start threatening us over here, they'd close up the position, and goodbye advantage. You see that? Goodbye advantage, right? One wrong move, and goodbye advantage. You see what I mean? If we pull back the knight, then the other option, no matter what, has to be to exchange it. But of course, why? Is it because of the knight or because of the bad bishop? Well, paradoxically, the right answer is to get rid of the knight in exchange for the opponent's bad bishop. Why is that? Because when the opponent played b6, they no longer have any pawns on white squares here, so the white squares become extremely weak. And this is exactly what Alekhine is going to take advantage of in this game to win the match. Never has the saying been more true, if you'll pardon the redundancy. A 6, threatening the queen, which now has to move. And now the bishop, which hadn't been developed yet, comes out putting pressure on the knight on c6. Take a good look at this position. Alekhine is starting his whole maneuver here to leave Nimzovich with no options at all. And for all of you who have read Nimzovich's books, you'll understand that this is practically impossible, since he was an absolute genius. Now, the idea is that they have very few possible moves. They have to defend this knight, for example, by playing knight to e7. Castling, h6 to prevent annoying knight jumps that would attack the queen and this weak or backward pawn on e6. The rook on d is placed on c1 to start putting pressure on this knight. The rook on d for black is also placed on c8 to defend the same knight. And we'll see the big difference between attacking, which is what the white pieces will do, and defending, which is what the black pieces will. Watch this masterclass in applying pressure that Alekhine puts on the black pieces, because you'll be able to use it in your own games. Pay attention. First of all, he starts with rook to c2. The goal is obvious, double up the rooks, right? To put even more pressure on this knight. But don't worry, it doesn't end here. How do black defend that knight? Well, they don't really have many options. One of the few options they have is to pin their own queen, right? With this move, queen to e8. But honestly, they don't have many other ways to defend that knight. For now, it's not too serious. The rook from a moves to c1, putting a lot of pressure on this spot right here. Honestly, black have very few options here. Very, very few options. Even though it looks like an even game, they're pretty much unsalvageable. They could try rook to c7 to double up, for example, but it wouldn't do them any good. In this case, Nimzovich played rook to b8, trying to look for some kind of counterplay in the future. White plays queen to e3, and now rook to c7. And here, the intense pressure begins with one of the patterns you should know, a pattern called Alekhine's gun. I'm sure some of you already know this pattern, Alekhine's gun, especially those who are more experienced or have been playing longer. You can use this pattern in your own games to put pressure on an open file. The open file here is the C file, and it starts with the following move. Rook to c3, queen to d7, rook from d1 to c2. And now what? The idea is that now, after the move king to f8, the space left behind the rooks is used by the queen, and this triple threat in a row is called Alekhine's gun, and it's usually pretty lethal. Right now, the rooks are doubled up. So how do you keep up the pressure now? Well, with this move, which is absolutely lethal. Bishop to a4. Let me explain the idea behind bishop to a4. If black now makes a dumb move, like, for example, g6, which wouldn't help at all, then b5 would follow and that knight couldn't be saved anymore. And if it moves, the rook behind it would be captured because it would be threatened 3 times over. Just look at the power of Alekhine's gun. So here, black can't do anything except for one resource that Nimzovich finds, which is to give up a pawn. Specifically, this pawn on b5 is sacrificed. But why? So that when it's captured, there's time to bring the king over to defend the rook. When the bishop retreats to make way, b5, the king has managed to get there to defend the rook on d7. Right, so now what? It seems like black has everything defended, and it's true, everything's covered. The knight is super well protected by 4 pieces. b4 is no longer a threat. b5 is no longer a threat. Why? Because the rook is extremely well defended. You know what? This would be great if black could just say, well, I won't move, I'll just pass, and that's it. The thing is, here the black pieces can't. No. As soon as they move, as soon as they make a move, they're going to lose a piece. So here, after Alekhine's brilliant move, h4, black had to resign. The only way not to lose a piece would be to advance this pawn. But after the exchanges, besides ending up with a passed pawn, they'd have to move and would therefore lose a piece. If they move the knight, it stops being defended. If they move the queen, it stops being defended. Or if they move the queen here, they stop defending the rook. That is, you can check for yourselves that they can't move. And so, after this incredible h4, right, the pressure they've created means black has to resign. This is a masterclass. One of those you should study several times to really understand it. It's one of my favorite games. If you want me to post more like this, really studying them to help you improve, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to do it because I love reviewing and going over these games. If you want to study high quality chess that's really worth it, like I do in my videos, I highly recommend placing your order now at at Chess's Art using the discount code ChessTeacher, because you'll get it at a fantastic price. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. And we'll see each other tomorrow, as always, friends, in the next one. Goodbye.